Welcome to Look Ahead Radio with Tom Arms and Lockwood Phillips.
Well, this evening we'll be, of course, talking with Tom Arms with viewpoints around the world, also his own blog and news sites, LookAhead Radio and LookAheadNews.com. And I want to promote that website, LookAheadNews.com. We're going to be chatting with him this evening in a few moments. And, of course, as always, to remind you, you are listening to Viewpoints here on the talk station, FM 107 AM 1240. And the numbers, if you'd like to join us, 252 area code 247-7282. That's 247-7282. 910 area code 353-4674. That's 353-4674. Toll free 800-818-2255 via email at viewpoints with an S, viewpointsradio@hotmail.com. And as of course, via Facebook at Viewpoints on the Talk Station, Viewpoints on the Talk Station. And also to remind you that you can listen to Tom Arms' Look Ahead Radio program every Friday afternoon here on the Talk Station. And Tom, I have a guest here in the studio with me this evening, an individual who has co-hosted and hosted this program for me on my periodic forays away from the studio, something that I don't like to do because every now and then I discover that the locks have been changed. And with that, Tom, let me introduce you to Mike McHugh. And Mike, Tom Arms. Good evening to both of you.
Hi, Tom. It's a pleasure. Please invite Lockwood to England.
Mike, here as well.
Yeah, he wants you to invite me to England,
that
Tom.
I can co-host the show.
Or host the show.
Or host it, yeah.
Yeah. Tom.
Why would I want you over here?
Well,
to set you straight, Tom.
Exactly. Tom, what's it like right now in London? Let's get an update on the weather because we're expecting the potential of some white stuff. And I'm talking about snow, of course. What's it like there right now?
Well, it's very cold. It's down around the freezing mark. But no prospect of any snow on the horizon.
Did somebody say global warming? I missed it. Oh, no, I apologize. As a matter of fact, it looks like it's going to be a cold and wet process across the United States. And as a matter of fact, California looks like it's going to get its fill of snow and water. All right. We were just chatting a few moments ago about the inauguration, and I know that this is not on our list of topics, but we'll get into the issues that you discussed. I'm just curious, as the inauguration is coming close, and my goodness, it's really now 2 weeks away. What is the mood there in Europe? Are they interested in the inauguration? What has been in the case in the past? Is there much interest in our celebration of transfer of leadership in this country?
Yes. They will be watching it live. There'll probably be snippets of the inaugural ball. There's been a bit of reporting about who's going to be attending the inaugural ball. There was some talk about, some bitterness between the Democrats and Republicans, and some people may not be wanting to attend. George Bush Sr. is not attending, but that's because he's in his 90s. I think he's 93.
Yeah, he's old.
Yeah.
So I think he's got a pretty good excuse. But yeah, no, it's being watched with great interest.
All right. Now, are you going to attend?
I think the invitation got lost in the post.
I think there's good seats still available.
Yeah, there are good seats.
If you have a parade troupe, you could probably get a space in the parade too.
Yeah, we were.
Well, maybe I can stand on your shoulders, Lockwood.
Okay, no. Well, I like the idea of getting the invite. Well, with that said, let's talk about the news as it's being reported in Europe right now about the events in the U.S., particularly the issue in Washington, D.C.
Well, you always ask me, that's the first thing, quite rightly so. What has been reported in the European press about America this week? Mm-hmm. And I would say the three big things are the Ethics Committee, mm-hmm. Trump's tweet following the Ethics Committee, mm-hmm. and then following that, the sort of further explanation of the tweet regarding the Ethics Committee, and finally, his row with the intelligence agencies about Russian hacking or not hacking, whichever may be the case. So those are the big stories that are being talked about.
Wow. So let's talk about the issue of the Ethics Committee. ethics and politics is always an interesting dynamic, almost oxymoronic. It's right up there with military intelligence and things like that. But it is this
Lockwood intelligence?
Hey, now we're getting close to home. But my question is this seen as some sort of just high dudgeon, or is there some sense that there's real issue here?
Well, I mean, it's really it's very odd. It's being taken. It's very odd here. The thought that effectively what the Republican congressmen were perceived or are perceived as wanting to do is as the chicken thieves taking over the chicken coop.
Well, okay, and that's been one of the arguments that were posed originally. That
to the winners go the spoils.
Yeah, that is the reality. Okay, then
but they don't steal them.
Well, nobody's. What do you mean?
Just for 2 years.
Like I said at the outset, politics and ethics, they really. The fact that they're even mentioned within the same sentence, let alone the same room, is sometimes a little unnerving, because it's like politicians telling you the truth. But anyhow, or telling you candidly what they want, what needs to be said. They're always looking for that vote. And I've got friends who are politicians who are listening, and I've probably ruined what little friendship I had with them. Let's talk about the tweet, though, which, interestingly enough, seemed to turn the Republicans around. What was the opinion there of the public about that?
Absolutely. And there was sort of shock that, this politician or businessman turned politician, whom nobody over here really trusts,
Why not?
seemed to be, well, let me finish, seemed to be trustworthy. He seemed to be coming down on the side of the angels. It was 1 to Trump. -10 to the ethical congressman. That was the initial response.
Oh, you said
that was the initial response.
Wait. You unfortunately qualify that with initial response. I want to know what happened after the initial response.
Well, then it started coming out that what he really meant was, let's not do it yet. Let's wait until we get some other things out of the way before we start stealing the chickens.
Now, wait a second. There is a concern related to this ethics commission, and that is the fact that it does not accommodate due process. As a matter of fact, anyone in the country can accuse a seated member of Congress for ethics violation. It goes into the star chamber, as it were, and they come out with some sort of, if you will, charge or judgment. And one would wonder, wouldn't it be nice to know that Mike McHugh, who is extremely liberal, said, tongue firmly planted in cheek, that
for a moment there, Tom liked me.
Said that he makes some claim against an individual related to children or dogs or maybe goats. There is a problem with due process, and that was what was the original concern. It just was poorly, if you will, instituted. But back to the issue. So there's a sense then again that there's a caution associated with how the president-elect is dealing with this?
Yes. They think perhaps, he wants to look good before he's inaugurated. He doesn't want this rather controversial subject marring his inauguration. And so he's sweeping it under the carpet for now.
Okay. All right.
Is how the second review is looking.
Okay. All right. Before we go to this break, we've got Larry from Swansboro standing by. I'm going to get you in this conversation too, Mike, but you're listening. Tom Arms with LookAhead Radio and LookAheadNews.com, our guest every Wednesday evening. Larry, good evening. Yes, sir.
Howdy, gentlemen.
Hi, Larry.
Good evening. I just got a couple of quick comments, and I am a junkie when it comes to this news. I think Lockwood knows that. I've been calling for 15 years. But it's very simple what Obama's up to with this silly fairy tale about Russia hacking into the election. First of all, it is a gigantic fundraising bonanza for the Democrats to scream and yell that the Russians stole the election from them and handed it to Donald Trump. Money is pouring in like a tsunami. 2, and this is a huge one for Obama, he ran around for months screaming and yelling that his legacy was on the line. Those are his policies up there sitting on Hillary's lap, and you've got to carry them across the goal line. And what happened? An asteroid struck liberalism on 8 November.
That's nice.
An asteroid struck it. So now, what is he going to do? He's 55, 60 years old. He'll live 50 more years, 40 more years. For 40 years, we're going to hear him on the stump for $300,000 at colleges. The Russians stole the election. It was not my policies or legacies that went down in flames. It was stolen. And we're going to hear that forever. The prima facie evidence that the Russians had nothing to do with this is that the FBI has confirmed several countries have hacked into Hillary's emails. If Russia wanted to torpedo Hillary, all they would have to have done was release one top-secret email that was hacked, and she would have been devastated. No top-secret emails were hacked. That lets you know that it was internal. NSA and disgruntled FBI employees, they released just enough to stick some pins in her and wouldn't dare have released a top-secret email because they would have been sent to Leavenworth for 1,000 years, which is where Hillary should be.
Okay.
I think it goes even into the DNC, Larry. I think there's probably some staffers that work there that were more aligned with Bernie Sanders' philosophy and campaign than they were with Hillary Clinton's, and I think they spilled the beans.
I agree with you, and some of them aren't with us anymore.
Seth Rich.
Rest in peace, Seth Rich.
Exactly.
You know, that's a whole show in itself there on that poor young man.
Yep,
Larry,
it's a shame.
Thank you very much for the call. I appreciate that. We're going to get back to that in a few moments to get Tom Arms' response to that, but also, you know, other things happening in Europe. We're looking forward to that conversation. Issues with Brexit. We have a UK diplomat who's quitting as a result of Brexit. I want to find out about that. I'm interested. Larry, thanks for your call. You're listening to Look Ahead Radio, host and LookAheadNews.com pundit and author Tom Arms here on Viewpoints Around the World.
Look Ahead Radio will return in just a moment.
This is Tom Arms with LookAheadNews.com's World Report for the week beginning the 9th of January. Look Ahead broadcasts tomorrow's news today so that you can plan to participate. Barack and Michelle say goodbye this week. The president will give his farewell speech in Chicago, and the First Lady will go on television with Oprah Winfrey as Donald and Melania plan the inauguration. Turkish, Russian, and Iranian diplomats are still expected to gather in Kazakhstan early next week, even though the Syrian ceasefire has broken down almost as quickly as it was announced by President Putin. More encouraging are Geneva talks between the Turkish and Cypriot leaders to resolve the 42-year-old dispute which has left the island divided. Also encouraging are peace talks between the Colombian government and the ELN, National Liberation Army, Colombia's second-largest guerrilla group. There are several interesting trials next week. The parents of a British jihadist appear in court charged with aiding and abetting a terrorist. The Gambian Supreme Court hears a legal challenge from President Yahya Jammeh, who's contesting the result of his country's December elections. In Italy on Wednesday, there are hearings into the Berlusconi sex and bribery case. And then on Tuesday, a Norwegian court hears the claim of mass murderer Anders Behring Breivik that he is being inhumanely treated by the Norwegian prison system. And finally, get your pants off on Wednesday. It's No Pants Subway Ride Day. That means commuters on New York's subway, Washington's Metro, London's Underground will be encouraged to cram into the metal boxes wearing only the briefest of briefs. And that was next week's News Today from LookAheadNews.com so that you can plan to participate in the world around you. Stay tuned after this message for LookAheadNews.com's expanded world analysis.
Quick, what do these sounds have in common? These are the sounds of geography. Geography helps us understand connections between people and places. But our kids aren't getting enough of it. Half can't locate Japan or India, and 20% can't even find the Pacific Ocean. So we created MyWonderfulWorld.org to give kids the power of global knowledge. Go to MyWonderfulWorld.org to learn more. It's a wonderful world.
This is Tom Arms with LookAheadNews.com's expanded world analysis for the week beginning the 9th of January. LookAheadNews.com broadcasts tomorrow's news today so that you can plan to participate. President Barack Obama started his political career in Chicago, and that is where he will end it with his farewell speech on Tuesday, when he will reflect on his 8 years in office. Elsewhere in the country, on Sunday, rallies are planned by Democratic Party activists in several states, all aimed at protecting Obamacare, Social Security, and Medicare. Last week, Russia's President Putin announced a Syrian ceasefire and announced that peace talks would be held with the rebels in Kazakhstan. Almost immediately, President Assad attacked rebel positions in the Damascus suburbs, and the ceasefire collapsed. But Putin still wants the peace guarantors, Turkey, Iran, and Russia, to meet as planned in Kazakhstan, with or without the rebels. Cyprus has been a divided island since 1974, when Turkish troops invaded the northern half and declared the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. Since then, there have been numerous attempts by numerous power brokers to reunite the island. The most promising has been a UN initiative which quietly started in September. On Monday, a major step is taken towards ending the conflict when Turkish Cypriot leader Mustafa Akinci and Greek Cypriot leader Nikos Anastasiadis meet in Geneva. Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos won the Nobel Peace Prize last month for negotiating a peace deal with the FARC terrorist group. But still operating is the smaller but still deadly Marxist terrorist group, the ELN. Peace talks start with them on Tuesday. The world was surprised when Gambia's strongman President Yahya Jammeh agreed to step aside after losing the elections on the 1st of December. Then he changed his mind. On Tuesday, the country's Supreme Court will hear his arguments that he should stay in power because the election was rigged by the opposition. Norwegian fascist mass murderer Anders Behring Breivik was sentenced to 21 years in prison after killing 77 people in 2011. Since then, he's been kept in solitary confinement. Breivik is now suing the Norwegian prison system for its inhumane treatment of him. On Wednesday, the court scene shifts to Italy, the latest hearing involving former Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi. His notorious Bunga Bunga parties involved underage prostitutes and political bribery. Billionaire businessman turned politician Berlusconi is currently banned from holding public office, but remains leader of his party Forza Italia and has avoided prison because he's over 70. And that was next week's News Today from LookAheadNews.com so that you can plan to participate in the world around you. Stay tuned for Viewpoints Around the World with myself and Lockwood Phillips.
Welcome back to Look Ahead Radio. Here is Lockwood Phillips.
Viewpoints Around the World with Tom Arms in London, and we have Mike McHugh here with us this evening to get in the conversation. McHugh's actually filled in for me. As a matter of fact, when I last
went across the pond, not enough times though. I need to get back behind that big microphone.
Need to work on that. We will.
McHugh points. Sounds so good.
All right, Tom, I want to get to the issues of the UK. The comments made by Larry a few moments ago about the fact that it's a fundraiser for the Democrats, that's small potatoes, I would argue, for the viewpoints of the European community, predominantly European, UK, and the rest of Europe, Central Europe particularly. But the topic of the Russian, what they call it hacking, I don't think it really qualifies as hacking. I think really more it's a matter of releasing information, and of course the accusations that there really is no true evidence. And of course, you mentioned the row with the intelligence community with President-elect Donald Trump. How is that being reported?
Well, it's being reported basically, extensively here, and I think there's a growing realization on this side, or belief on this side of the Atlantic, that Trump is in a no-win situation. If he accepts the intelligence community's report that Putin hacked into the Democratic Party and leaked the information and orchestrated the leaks to help the Trump campaign, then he's branded as a Putin poodle. Mm-hmm. And it undermines his mandate to govern. If, on the other hand, he rejects the intelligence community's reports, then he undermines the workings of government and damages the relationship with the CIA and others before he even comes into office.
Okay, let me move on to other things, but this brings me to the final conclusion. It is perceived then among the European press and I guess the general populace that in fact Russia did have an active participation in the election, and that is the perception. That's the real story.
It is because they believe that the intelligence agencies are neutral in doing their investigation.
Okay, all right.
They, unlike politicians, don't have an axe to grind.
Okay, there is a feeling here in the States, I just mentioned this, that in fact the intelligence agencies have been used for political purposes, and in the past as well. And by the way, you could even say that with, I know, heaven forbid, the concept of IRS, but we won't go to there. Let's go to the diplomat in the European Union who's quitting in the middle of Brexit talks. What's going? Brexit is still the hot topic item then in Europe.
Oh, it will be for a long time to come. And his name is Sir Ivan Rogers, and he is the British ambassador to the European Commission. And a few weeks ago, he reported back that it was going to take at least 10 years, not 2 years, but at least 10 years and probably longer, much longer, to negotiate British withdrawal from the European Union. It was going to be very difficult and very disruptive.
Let me interrupt with a real quick note here. If, for all intents and purposes, then, even though the Brits have voted to leave the European Union, it's moot. Within the next 10 years, the environment's going to change so radically. Even the European Union.
We don't know that. We don't know that. But let's work on the assumption. I think we have to work on the assumption that the Commission, the European Commission in Brussels, will still be there.
Oh, absolutely.
As far as negotiations are concerned. So there have to be some given assumptions in the political landscape, and I think that has to be one of them till we are told or learn otherwise.
Well, what are the chances?
Wait a minute. Let me finish, Lockwood.
Okay. All right.
So he was absolutely destroyed by the Brexiteers in the Commons, who got up and attacked him for daring to say this. And so he resigns effectively about 2 weeks later. And he's saying that basically the government is completely muddled, that it doesn't know what it's doing. And that's the reason he's resigning. And he sent an email out to his staff saying you have to have the courage to stand up to the politicians. Now, the result of this has been that both sides of the political fence have gone after it. The Brexiteers have attacked him for basically not representing the government's policies, or what they think should be the government's policies. The people who are opposed to leaving Europe have supported him and attacked the government for refusing to listen to their diplomats, and claiming that the only way, every time they hear something they don't like, they just shout it down. And that is their way of trying to deal with the Brexit debate. So it just opened up all the wounds all over again. I should add that within 24 hours, he was replaced.
Wow. Mike, you had a comment.
Tom, I spoke to some friends of mine who live in your adopted country, England, this past weekend, and they were weighing whether or not, or they were debating amongst themselves whether or not they were going to travel to visit the United States this year. Because of the Brexit vote, what's the sentiment with just the average Joe in the street and the households? Are people like holding back, making purchases, travel plans? How has that affected just the average household in Great Britain?
Well, when it comes to travel, the pound has dropped by about 25-30% in value.
Yeah.
Against the dollar.
Sure.
So, I'm planning to come over to the States in April. And it's going to cost me about 30% more. So, yes, it is affecting travel plans.
Okay.
It's only just now beginning to filter into the inflation figures.
So you're not seeing
because a lot of the orders for goods and things were placed when the pound was still above 150. And the prices in the autumn reflected the pre-Brexit vote prices.
Okay.
We're starting to get letters in the post now saying that prices of various things are going to be going up 10-15%.
But do you, like we use housing starts, we use car sales as metrics over here to indicate how the economy's going. Is it too early yet to say that, because of this, you're not constructing new commercial or residential homes, or people aren't buying automobiles or durable goods? Is that?
Yeah, prices of homes. We've had a long period of heavy price increases in housing.
Yeah.
Especially in the part of London where I live, where it's been going up 10, 15, 20% a year. They're starting to come down. Mm-hmm. And Brexit is being given as the reason.
Okay.
Inflation.
All right, real quickly.
They're not coming down dramatically.
Yeah.
And really, in many respects, the economy is much more resilient than the anti-Brexiteers thought it would be.
All right. Real quick question for you. We've got to go to the break, Tom.
We're going to keep him over the break?
Oh, yeah. Tom
excellent.
Arms of LookAhead Radio and, of course, LookAheadNews.com. Tom, very quickly, the Supreme Court or the court issue, when will the court be hearing the topic of how Brexit was voted on and whether or not it, in fact, is not a legal decision?
They haven't announced the exact date yet, but it's expected to be next week.
Okay, we're going to find out more about that next week as well. We've got Tom Arms of Look Ahead Radio and, of course, LookAheadNews.com with viewpoints around the world here on the talk station. Coming back in just a moment, we'll chat about items such as, the attack in Istanbul and a ceasefire and Russia's involvement in the Middle East. And is there really a ceasefire? We'll find out about that. Also, I saw an interesting story today that sales of Mein Kampf, the famous book that led to Hitler's rise, apparently the sales of that book are soaring in Germany. Stay with us here with Tom Arms.
Look Ahead Radio will return in just a moment.
They say the best things in life are free. So, hey, why are we paying so much for our basic information and entertainment needs? The average cable TV bill has more than doubled in the last 10 years. The price of movie tickets keeps going up. So, exactly what is free today anyway? Well, you're listening to it. Local radio. Support the advertisers that support this radio station. And keep listening. We won't send you a bill. There are still some things you just shouldn't have to pay for.
We now return to Look Ahead Radio. Here is Lockwood Phillips.
Viewpoints around the world with Tom Arms. Joining us from London, England, we have here in the studio this afternoon Mike McHugh, and of course Lockwood behind the mic, and Ross behind the wall, window and board. I've got to say thank you to Ross. Tom, let's move on to the issues here real quickly. Both really kind of connected, oddly enough. The analysis on the attack in Istanbul, and also I want to talk about the ceasefire in Russia and the Middle East, and we got to bring Turkey into that conversation as well. But what's the analysis there with the attack in Istanbul, with ISIS laying claim to the it was a Santa, oddly enough. It was
he's dressed like a Santa.
Yeah,
it was, quickly disrobe that outfit.
That was strange.
Maybe it was Santa.
It may be. I mean, but it was a Santa lookalike. I apologize. But what is the analysis on that?
Well, this is the latest in a long line of attacks in Syria.
Mm-hmm.
And basically the country is under attack from two groups. One is the Kurdish minority, and the other is ISIS.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2016, there were 20 terrorist attacks in Turkey. 20.
Wow.
20.
And by the way,
there was one really in France.
Mm-hmm.
Or no, two. Two in France.
Paris
20
and Nice.
in Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
And roughly 10 for each group.
Wow.
That doesn't include 70 rocket attacks by ISIS in the first half of the year before the Turks occupied a buffer zone in northern Syria.
Right. Now, here's a quick question for you on this. And we've seen also stories about the prime minister or the premier of Turkey, who has taken also to task the press, and in fact has made more arrests. What is the mood in Turkey, and how is that influencing both the Middle East and I would even argue Europe, in light of the fact that Turkey would like to be a member of the EU.
Well, that last point, I think, is well and truly on the back burner for the time being. The terrorist attacks are creating a siege mentality in Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
This is being taken advantage of, I believe, by President Erdogan, because his stated political aim is to revise the constitution to give himself sweeping executive powers. Now, if the country is under attack, if he's creating this siege mentality and arresting people and journalists and blaming them and everything else instead of the Kurds and ISIS, then what he's effectively doing is saying, I need these powers to deal with the siege that we're under.
Okay.
So he's effectively, the ISIS and the Kurds are helping him to grab power.
All right, let me move on to another issue, and of course it's related to Russia, and the effort to establish a ceasefire, which interestingly enough ignored the U.S. As a matter of fact, the U.S. and everybody is saying this administration, meaning the Obama administration, was not invited. How was that received in Europe, particularly, and what does this say about the future of the Middle East and who the key players will be?
Well, it really, I'm surprised. I have noticed that, and I've written about that the U.S., France, Britain, none of them were included in the list of guarantors. The list of guarantors are Iran,
mm-hmm.
Russia, and Turkey, who are really people that the West doesn't want guaranteeing the peace. You certainly don't want Iran guaranteeing any peace agreement in the region, and you don't want the Russians doing it either. As for Turkey, well, they're a bit iffy. They are a NATO ally, and they have been opposed to Assad in the past. They're sort of making some noises now about saying he's not quite such a bad person. But in the past, they were leading the anti-Assad brigade.
Okay.
So I think it's very significant that Russia is dictating the terms of the peace talks and who is going to be the guarantor, and that the U.S. and the rest of the West are being pointedly excluded.
What does this say about future Russian and European relations? And keep in mind that Russia provides a significant amount of resources, particularly natural gas, to European countries. Are we looking at the resurgence of the Cold War?
Yes,
okay.
I think we are. I think we definitely are, and
okay.
They are very worried, as I've said before, about Trump's comments about Putin being such a good, strong man, and how he wants to deal with him, and how he wants to get on with him.
But wait a second, Tom. What happened to the Russian reset that we were promised 4 years ago?
Okay, you keep bringing that up. It was longer than 4 years ago, I believe, and certainly Hillary presented the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov with a plastic button and said, "Let's push it together." And after that button was reset, or the button was pushed, things did improve. For instance, the Russians gave overflight rights to American military planes flying troops and supplies to Afghanistan. They did various other things as well. They started talking about reducing nuclear weapons. They dropped their opposition to the stationing of a defensive shield in Eastern Europe. But then, wait a minute, it all came to a shuddering halt when Russia invaded the Crimea, and the reset button was thrown out the window. But it was Russia that invaded the Crimea. It wasn't America that invaded Ukraine.
I understand, but it does beg the question about how this administration, the current administration, is perceived in Europe as being still a peace-loving administration, and yet everything that theoretically was promised over the past 8 years, and definitely I would say even over the past 4 years, because I insist on the issue that it was during the election when President Obama said after the election he would be sitting down, and this was the development of, quote, the Russian reset. All right, related to that, and this is another question that's really not on our list, but the efforts on the part of President Obama to take action against Russia because of back to the issue of hacking and the fact that he has actually sent diplomats home, closed down diplomatic facilities for the Russians, and yet Mr. Putin has chosen not to respond. How was that reported in the European press? Was that seen as
very interesting? Very interesting. You are sitting down. I can see your picture there, Lockwood.
Thank you. Yep.
I think Trump's right.
Wow.
Wait,
Ross just woke up.
Wait a second.
Okay. I think when Trump tweeted, Putin is very smart, he was absolutely spot on. Now, it's very interesting. The British press here, in particular the Times, stop holding your head.
He is holding his head. He's punching his forehead.
I can't believe it. Go ahead.
You're uncanny. Uncanny, Tom.
The Times reported Trump backs Putin in row with Obama.
Oh.
Okay, that was the headline. Okay, and I saw this now. I'd seen the tweet, and I thought, wow, something else must have come out. He must have stuck his foot in it again.
Right.
And it was coming out really smelling nastily. And so I read the article very carefully, and all it was that Trump said Putin was smart. And I think Putin is very, very smart. I think he's handled it extraordinarily well, and he's running circles around Obama on this subject.
Well, hey,
Okay?
Which, you say that, and that's true, Tom. But so going back to the alleged Russian hacking, who in the Russians' eyes would they have wanted to be the victor in our last presidential election, Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump?
Trump.
No.
I think there's more benefit from Clinton being the winner.
Yeah, because they know what they're getting. They know what they're getting. Trump's an unknown.
No, of course Trump.
Oh,
I mean, Trump wants to reduce the defensive shield. Trump wants to increase tariffs. This is going to create opportunities.
I think
America withdraws. It's going to create opportunities, political vacuums for the Russians to fill in the Middle East, in Europe, in Asia, all over.
No,
All right, we've got to go.
This.
We got to go to a break.
And I'll tell you why. We're going to a break.
We're going to go to the break. We've got Tom Arms.
Was still punching his head.
Look at I am. Look Ahead Radio, and of course, LookAheadNews.com. You're listening to Viewpoints Around the World with Tom Arms.
Look Ahead Radio will return in just a moment.
Observations of an Expat by Tom Arms from LookAheadNews.com. Donald Trump is in a no-win situation as regards Russian hacking versus American intelligence agencies versus Donald Trump. Putin, as we all know by now, has been accused by the American intelligence agencies and several foreign ones of hacking into the computers of the Democratic National Committee and leaking the contents to help Trump win the U.S. presidency. The Russian president has denied this, as he has denied many other misdeeds. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, the channel of the leaks, has backed him up. So has Donald Trump. On the other side of the fence are, not surprisingly, a Democratic Party in search of a scapegoat to explain the inexplicable, and America's spy nerds. Trump can't really say that he agrees with the intelligence agencies. To do so would leave him branded as Putin's poodle and undermine his mandate to govern. On the other hand, if he rejects the advice of his own intelligence experts, then he undermines the workings of the American government and damages his future relationship with the CIA, FBI, military intelligence, and the National Security Agency. It would be difficult for any government employee to work with a president whom he believes sacrificed America's electoral system. Conversely, if Trump honestly believes that the intelligence agencies are being orchestrated by his political opponents, he will have difficulty accepting assessments which he needs to make decisions affecting the entire world. There is, of course, another conspiracy theory doing the round. That is that the Democratic establishment and President Barack Obama are orchestrating the hacking row to protect the Obama legacy. Well, let's look at the backgrounds of the heads of the three agencies laying the blame at Putin's door. any pro-Obama conspiracy would require their connivance. James Comey, director of the FBI, took up his position in 2013 after a long legal career which included a stint as Deputy Attorney General under George W. Bush. He has been a registered Republican most of his adult life and contributed to the campaigns of Republican presidential hopefuls Mitt Romney and John McCain. On top of that, his credentials as an Obama-Clinton supporter were, shall we say, questioned when he reopened the Clinton email case days before the November election. It's difficult to pin a political label on CIA Director John O'Brien. With 25 years at Langley and its various outposts, he is a career spy. Of course, at the end of November, he took the unusual step of publicly warning President-elect Trump to be wary of Russia and urged him to keep in place the Iran nuclear deal. Balance that against the reason he was not appointed CIA director sooner. Senate opposition, because he implemented the Bush policy of sending terrorist suspects to countries where it was known they would be tortured. Admiral William Rogers took up his post at the National Security Agency in 2014. He is also head of U.S. Cyber Command. The NSA is America's electronic spy agency. Admiral Rogers is a career Navy man, whose last post was head of the U.S. Navy's electronic spy operations. The post of director of the NSA does not require Senate confirmation, but that of head of U.S. Cyber Command does. He was unanimously approved. So, on balance, it seems highly unlikely that the intelligence agencies are conspiring with the Democratic leadership to destroy Trump before he takes the oath of office. They are, therefore, either very right or very wrong. From Putin's point of view, it really doesn't matter. The resulting confusion, accusations and counter-accusations means he is the only winner. As Trump recently tweeted about the Russian leader, "I always knew he was very smart."
Welcome back to Look Ahead Radio. Here is Lockwood Phillips.
Viewpoints around the world with Tom Arms. We've got Mike McHugh here in the studio. Mike, I'm going to give you an opportunity just to rebut the observations from Tom because we've got to move on. We've only got about 5 minutes. Go for it.
Yeah, quickly, because I want to say something else. No, I was alongside you all the way there until your answer about who you guys thought who the Russians felt would have been their candidate of choice of winning, and I thought it would have been Clinton, only because it would have been just a third term of the continuation of Obama, which they more or less handled like putty, rather than Trump, the unknown.
Yep.
Because I've talked to people in D.C. that have been in government for 30 years or so, and what they're saying is, Trump, for all his peculiarities that he has and his penchant for tweeting, maybe this is what the world and the country need is some sort of wild card coming from our shores to counter the nuts over in North Korea, Iran, the mullahs, the Middle East, what have you,
and Putin,
and Putin to a degree, yeah. But
real quickly, Tom, that makes the European community very uncomfortable, does it not?
It does.
Trump's
Let me just say, I was at a party the other night. It was a New Year's Day party, and we were talking about Trump and Brexit, and everyone there was opposed to Trump and opposed to Brexit, and we decided that if we were wrong, then we would win, because everything would turn out all right.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
If we were right, we'd win as well, because a year from now we'd be having a party called the "I Told You So" party. I told you so party.
Good point. All right,
well, Tom, I was at a New Year's Eve party as well, and they weren't talking about Brexit. They couldn't tell you where Crimea was, but what people over here on our shores are thinking about and what they're concerned about is the health of the Queen Mum, and George Michael.
What's the reports on those? The Queen, how is she doing? I failed to ask that at the opening.
She's been
well, she hasn't been well lately.
Right.
She's had a heavy cold.
But is there fear of her health?
Because she hadn't been seen like in 10 days.
There's always fear of her health.
Okay.
She's sort of a strand which runs through the country and helps to hold it together. She's symbolic. She has no real political or actual political power, but the symbolic political power is immense.
Okay, and by the way, who would replace her?
Charles.
Okay, I just wanted to find out. Let's talk about the issue of George Michael. How much coverage did that get?
Oh, a lot.
Okay.
And the latest is that he probably committed suicide.
Right. Then there's
But it's not definite yet.
Okay, let's move on to other social issues, as a matter of fact. Sales of Mein Kampf soaring in Germany. This is a book that was banned.
It has been banned for 70 years. The publisher brought it out a year ago. He only printed 4,000 copies because he didn't think he'd sell anymore. He sold 85,000 so far, and it's going into its sixth edition.
But why? Not why. Well, why is it so popular?
Okay, now I know what you want to say, and it's not as many as it could have been. The non-fiction books actually sell very well in Germany, and although it's sort of at the bottom of the bestseller list, it's a long way from the top. The top seller is all about trees in Germany, and it sold last year 500,000 copies.
But why is Mein Kampf even being released again?
Well, they think it's time. 70 years. The copy that's being released is heavily academic. It's got lots of annotations and everything else. They're not allowed to have on the cover a picture of Hitler.
Okay.
It has to have a plain white cover.
Let me move on to two other items very quickly. We've got to get to the world's oldest killer whale if we can. Train service between China and London. Do I see that correctly?
Yeah. And, in the Middle Ages and in the late Roman times, there's something called the Silk Road.
Right.
And that was a long caravan, a camel caravan, which stretched from China all the way to Europe, mainly to Constantinople, Constantinople, which is now Istanbul. And it took years for goods to reach Constantinople from China and vice versa. And of course, it made them very expensive. And now with this railroad, it's basically being talked about as the new Silk Road. And it's going to be the cheapest, easiest, quickest way of moving goods from China to Europe.
So much for the Pan American or the
TPP.
The canal, the Panama Canal, Pan-X as it's known too. All right, as we wrap it up, world's oldest killer whale is missing.
Guess what her name is?
Rosie O'Donnell. No.
Granny.
What?
Granny, as in your grandmother.
And
She's a killer whale, Puget Sound, believed to be 100 years old.
Wow.
She's missing, presumed, passed on to the great Puget Sound in the sky.
wow. All right, Tom Arms of Look Ahead Radio and, of course, lookaheadnews.com. Heard every Friday evening here on the Talk Station and radio stations around the world now. Stay tuned for more here on the Talk Station.
Look Ahead Radio is a production of the Talk Station.